Welcome back to the channel, lads. Smash that like button, share it around, and make sure you're subscribed. Right then, let's crack on with today's news. Mate, things at West Ham are looking proper messy right now, especially after that hammering against Spurs at the London Stadium. That scoreline didn't just hurt, it showed up all the cracks we've been pretending weren't there. Defensively, we were all over the place, no bite, no intensity when it really mattered. And to top it off, Graham Potter's getting absolutely battered with criticism. The bloke came in with all this talk about giving us an identity and making us competitive, but honestly, the fans are already on his back and the press aren't holding back either. You can feel it, the patience is running out. And you've got to wonder how long before the board decides they've had enough. The problem is that the setback against the London rival did not happen in isolation. There had already been signs of instability, especially at home difficulties in defending set pieces, recurring mistakes in transitions, and a sense that the team cannot control the rhythm of the game. With every slip, the perception grows that the season still at an early stage could become more difficult than imagined. In this scenario, Tomáš Souček's sending off was the symbol of a tragic night. The midfielder, considered one of the pillars of the squad, made a reckless and unnecessary challenge on a Tottenham player receiving a red card in the first half. From that point on, the team collapsed without its reference in midfield. West Ham opened up spaces, lost organization, and ended up conceding the goals that sealed the thrashing. More than a technical mistake, it was a gesture of psychological imbalance that proved costly. No manager can sustain a game plan when losing such a key player in that way, and Potter will certainly reflect on the impact of this kind of behavior in high-pressure matches. Now the challenge is to respond against Crystal Palace, an opponent arriving in slightly more stable form. Despite some important absences, such as Ismaila Sarr, Eddie Nketiah, and Sheikh Doucouré, Palace have shown themselves to be competitive and know how to exploit their rivals' mistakes, especially on counter-attacks. Striker Jean-Philippe Mateta, for example, has been a key figure in turning chances into goals even without a complete squad. The forecasts for the clash show balance but do not favor West Ham. The Stats Insider website simulated the match 10,000 times and pointed to a 35.9% chance of a Hammers win against 38.4% for Palace and 25.7% for a draw. 4Bet was more straightforward. It predicts a 2-1 Palace victory. Other analysts, such as those at OneFootball, believe in a tight game with the possibility of a draw or a narrow win for the visitors. For West Ham, it will be essential to fix the defensive vulnerability, especially at home. Errors in coverage, difficulties with set pieces, and disorganization in offensive transitions have been costly. Moreover, the team will have to deal with the psychological pressure. Playing at the London Stadium can be a burden if the fans lose patience early, but it can also be fuel if the team shows intensity and commitment from the start. In the end, it may all come down to the mental side. If West Ham cannot turn frustration into focus and discipline, attitudes like Souček's will continue to sabotage any possibility of a comeback. And more such behaviors, if repeated, could lead Graham Potter to reconsider even using the player, since no manager accepts seeing his work collapse due to disciplinary flaws that undermine the entire strategy. Crystal Palace, meanwhile, even with limitations, know they can exploit precisely this fragility to snatch points away from home. The feeling is that we will have a balanced duel but with a slight edge for the visitors. A 1-1 draw or a narrow 2-1 Palace victory seems the most likely scenario. Whatever the result, one thing is clear. West Ham need to deliver immediate answers. Not only to calm the rumors about Graham Potter's future, but also to avoid letting the season slip away in its early chapters. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. El Hadji Malik Diouf may have only just arrived at West Ham, but he has already become one of the few reasons for optimism in a season that began surrounded by doubts and frustrations. The young Senegalese fullback, just 20 years old, was signed from Slavia Prague last summer and entered history as the first paid acquisition of the Graham Potter era. Even with little experience, it didn't take long for him to stand out and catch the attention of fans and pundits. His debut against Sunderland in the Premier League opener made it clear that he had something different to offer, showing personality, defensive solidity, and the energy to contribute across several areas of the pitch. That first impression was reinforced in the convincing win over Nottingham Forest when he was one of the best players on the pitch, recording an assist 9, defensive contributions, and playing an active role in the attacking build-up with key passes in the final third. These performances quickly turned him into one of the few positive stories amid a turbulent start to the season. West Ham have been struggling with poor results, and the pressure on manager Graham Potter is only growing, but Diouf stood out precisely by being the exception in a difficult context. The youngster even showed maturity off the pitch when, after the defeat to Tottenham, he publicly appealed for the fans to continue supporting the team. This simple yet highly symbolic gesture strengthened his bond with supporters and made him seen not just as a prospect, but as someone ready to wear the shirt with pride even in the toughest moments. However, the enthusiasm surrounding Diouf could quickly turn into frustration. That's because, according to analysis and backstage commentary, there is a possibility that a West Ham relegation to the Championship could trigger a real squad exodus. And in this scenario, the Senegalese's name has started to be considered as a potential departure, since there would hardly be a shortage of interested clubs in a young, talented player who has already shown he can compete at a high level in the Premier League. Ian Darke, an experienced commentator, highlighted in an interview that Diouf was one of the rare signings who truly made an immediate impact at the club. According to him, he is a player with a strong profile, someone who stands out not only for his technical quality, but also for his attitude on the pitch. Dark stressed that West Ham would need more players like him and could not afford to lose someone of his caliber. However, he made it clear that in the event of relegation, it would be inevitable that many players would seek new opportunities and Diouf would be among them. This type of speculation adds even more pressure on the board. For the fans, losing such a promising player so soon after his arrival would be a heavy blow, as Diouf represents the hope of renewal amid a scenario marked by criticism and insecurity. While much of the squad seems unable to find consistency, he has shown from the outset that he can be part of the solution, not the problem. And it is precisely this contrast that makes his permanence so important. At the same time, the European market is certainly watching closely. Young players who combine physical intensity, tactical discipline, and good attacking ability are valuable assets. And if West Ham cannot stabilize in the league, it will be natural for offers to come in. The dilemma is clear. Either the club manages to react and stay in, the Premier League consolidating Diouf as a central piece of the project, or it runs the risk of seeing him leave, along with other important names, in an almost inevitable exodus. Remaining in the top flight would not only mean keeping revenue and prestige, but also holding on to strategic assets for the future. Diouf has all the conditions to be not just a good signing, but a pillar of reconstruction, someone who could represent a new cycle of competitiveness. The problem is that West Ham's instability threatens to turn even the good news into uncertainty. The Senegalese arrived with little fanfare, but quickly earned his place, and now his future is already the subject of speculation. For the fans, it is essential that he is protected and valued, as he represents a rare exception in a period marked by defensive mistakes, frustrating results, and loss of confidence. Losing Diouf so soon would not just mean losing a promising player, but also a part of what remains of hope in a team that tries round after round to avoid complete collapse. West Ham needs stability and focus more than ever. The season has already shown that individual and collective mistakes have been costly, and it is precisely in players like Diouf that lies the possibility of regaining some balance. Letting him slip away, especially in a time of crisis, would be admitting that even the positives have turned into problems. For the fans, the board, and the continuity of Potter's project itself keeping the Senegalese has become a symbolic matter. The future of West Ham depends on strategic decisions, and holding on to El Hadji Malick Diouf could be one of the most important. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. Now, turning our attention back to the matter of Coach Graham Potter, the pressure on him is reaching breaking point at West Ham United. The manager hoped that the emphatic 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest before the international break would spark a turnaround. But the heavy home defeat to Tottenham by the same scoreline exposed just how deep the problems run. Potter's post-match words tried to calm the storm, emphasizing unity and the need to correct mistakes. Yet this patient tone no longer convinces the supporters or the board. Since taking charge in January, the 50-year-old has enjoyed both time and freedom to shape the squad, but the results are alarming, less than a point per match on average. And only a 27% win rate, the second worst of any West Ham manager in the Premier League era. In such an unstable climate, talk of change feels inevitable. Chairman David Sullivan is believed to be sounding out alternatives. And one name is emerging above the rest, Nuno Espirito. Santo, the Portuguese coach, is respected in England for turning modest squads into competitive. Besides, his pragmatic style of compact, defending, and rapid transitions fit in exactly what West Ham currently lack. Nuno's credentials are impressive. He transformed Nottingham Forest from relegation candidates into a European contender in record time, earning praise from pundits and journalists alike. Fabrizio Romano highlighted his ability to revive struggling clubs, while Sky Sports' Sam Obaseki called his work incredible. His track record in the Premier League from Wolves to Tottenham shows a coach who has lived both the pressures of big clubs and the challenges of lifting smaller ones. At Nottingham Forest and Wolves, his disciplined counter-attacking football proved highly effective, even if it wasn't always dazzling. For West Ham, who have lost 3 of their last 4 matches and sit 18th in the table, that sort of immediate competitiveness could be vital. Of course, Nuno is not without risk. His brief time at Tottenham raised doubts about how he handles star-studded squads, and his departure from Forest after disagreements with executives showed that relationships off the pitch can be fragile. Yet for a club staring at a relegation fight, short-term results often matter more than long-term vision. That leaves Sullivan with a stark choice: persist with Potter in the hope that his project finally clicks, or act decisively and bring in Nuno as a crisis solution. Each passing match now carries extra weight, and hesitation could make recovery nearly impossible. For a chairman known for tough, sometimes unpopular decisions, this may be the moment to act. Moving swiftly for Nuno could signal intent, and restore belief delaying could mean losing a proven candidate and further souring the already restless fan base. West Ham are at a crossroads. Continue with a project that has failed to ignite or gamble on a manager with experience, resilience, and a record of reviving struggling clubs. If Sullivan takes the risk, it might open a new chapter in East London. If he waits, the danger is that the Hammers slip deeper into crisis and find themselves fighting desperately against relegation once again.